Yeah, there'll be plenty of time for questions, but it's good everyone's getting involved. All right, so thanks, Zara. Our next speaker is Harris Sultan, a Pakistani-Australian ex-Muslim atheist, author of the book The Curse of God.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to say thanks to John Perkins and the Secular Party of Australia for hosting this event. It's the second event. He's always been giving good support to the ex-Muslims. Armin has said we don't want to say that we're the most oppressed group, but it's pretty close to the most oppressed group. We have the organization now we're seeing in feminist movement or the LGBTQ movement, but the ex-Muslim movement is still in its early days, in its infancy. And a lot of things are happening now that is putting us on the map, and Rahaf's story is obviously being one of those stories that has actually brought attention to the word ex-Muslim. I believe it was first popularized or started by Mariam Namazi back in 2006 or 7, I think. So there's a 10, 11-year journey behind that. Rahaf would have been, 7 or 8 years old when that started. But nobody knew. So I've been an atheist for probably about 12, 13 years, and I never used that term either. I was just okay with living my life, not being an atheist, and not speaking about Islam. My family's Muslim. They're okay. But there was no need to speak about it. And then something changed last year. Something changed. There was a crackdown in Pakistan of all the atheist bloggers, where the government decided to shut them down, the Facebook pages, and Facebook gave those details, their personal details, who these people were, to the authorities, and there was a massive crackdown. There was close to 20 people arrested. Most of them dispersed. Government sometimes did let them go, but the head of them was not let go. He's still in prison. We don't know what's happening. Hopefully he will be released, or maybe not. We don't know. But that kind of angered me. And then a couple of weeks later, there was a student by the name of Mashal Khan. He was lynched by a mob in a university, brutally murdered. When the body was given to his mother, she tried to hold his hand, and she said every bone in his hand was broken. Now this happened at a university, and as Armin said, the people in these countries, they're doing exactly what we're doing, and with a relative comfort. I hope there's no one outside with a vest, but it is happening in those countries. The people getting butchered by mobs for simply speaking about it. And the only downside is it doesn't hit the mainstream media. And you wonder why that is. I genuinely believe it's because, as Armin said, that people think that we're too white to talk about this. We don't want to bring that out, and we don't want to be called that you're Islamophobe, this dreaded term, whoever invented that. You're racist, you're a bigot. It's a bit of a conundrum. It seems like an alliance. It's that unholy alliance that no one could have guessed that 30 years ago. If ex-Muslim movement had started in the 70s, I think all the hippies would have been on our side. They all would have been saying, yes, let's just spread free love. It's okay to be gay. It's okay to be a woman and wear shorts and everything. But I think we were running a little late. I think we were 40 years too late. And now the Western world has gone through that metamorphosis where they've evolved through that. Okay, we've corrected our society, we've promoted liberal values, but now we're not going to talk. Now we also have to protect the minorities. And Muslims, fair enough, are kind of minority, but they are ignoring the minority within the minority. Rahaf's story is just one story that, thankfully, it actually kind of surprised me why it actually got that big. Only because of Twitter, only because this underground ex-Muslim movement had become so popular that, for example, Armin's got 2 million followers on Facebook. His Twitter's got many thousands, and there's so many other famous ex-Muslims who have actually been doing this work for the last 7, 8, probably 10 years. And now they've built the audience that, okay, at least on social media, but still there's no mention in the mainstream media. And that went out of control. moment Rahab, this unknown 18-year-old Saudi girl, started tweeting, sending those frantic tweets that I'm in my hotel and they're trying to send me back. And don't forget, just a year and a half or probably 2 years earlier, there was another Saudi girl. Her name was Dina Ali. And she tried to do the same thing, but it didn't work. It just didn't stick. And now you can imagine how close, how delicate the life actually hangs in these kind of situations. Dina Ali was deported back from Philippines to Saudi Arabia. What happened to her? Nobody knows. Is she alive? Is she in prison? We don't know. And that is exactly what would have happened to Rahaf. But thankfully, something happened. Something changed, and we're excited about that. We're happy about that. But Rahaf's story is not just one of them. I try to get just one ex-Muslim. Now, I get calls for help from many ex-Muslims, mainly from Pakistan, because I'm Pakistani, and they ask me for help. One of them had a very touching story. I was hoping to get him on, but we couldn't really connect. And although I wanted to ignore it, just treat it like any other call for help, not because I didn't feel for them, but because of how much can I do? Can I? I don't want to bite more than what I could chew. But his story was so touching that this guy was on the run for 7 years from his family, from his friends, from the local religious imam. And I thought, okay, what can I do? He wanted to escape from Pakistan into some place where he can just sit down and probably seek asylum. He didn't have the luxury because he didn't have a powerful passport. He had a Pakistani passport. So there are only very handful of countries where you can go on that passport. I think you can either go to Nepal or Sri Lanka or some other countries. And that was his plan, that he'd fly there and then he'd apply for asylum. And he would go, and then he would hopefully be resettled in either in Australia or Canada or America or UK or some other good European country. That was his story, and I didn't know how to do it. I said, okay, let's set up GoFundMe page, and did that. I'd sent his story to many mainstream media outlets, and nobody wanted to touch it. And anyway, so thanks to the support of people, we did manage to raise just enough money that we could actually now send him. So he's in Nepal right now, where he might have to wait another 6-7 years before he's actually resettled either in Australia or anywhere. But probably not Australia. We are, as Zara said, we are lagging a bit behind on those issues. That's just one more story. So now you might have heard of Rahaf. Now you've heard of Spartacus, but there's so many people. How do we handle this? What do we do? And I'm generally an optimistic person, and I genuinely believe that there would be a point, it's very close to that tipping point, when something like this happen again and these governments will be forced to do something, their own governments. 2012 Gallup survey suggested we have 2% people in Pakistan that are convinced atheists, not just agnostics, not non-religious, confirmed atheists. 2%, yeah, you might think it's a very small number, but that translates to 4 million people. That's what is roughly the population of Victoria. It's bigger than the population of many European countries. Now that is a big number. What is happening with these people? Well, they are right now whinging and talking about their experiences on Facebook or social media. But that cannot sustain like that forever. And that number is going to constantly grow. This number was actually 1% in 2005. So in 7 years, it doubled. Let's hope it doubles again. And that is what we're trying to do, to actually encourage these people to say, okay, obviously you can't just all 4 million people from Pakistan alone can go somewhere else. I think Saudi Arabia has 5%, which translates something like 1.5 million or something. These numbers are growing, and these countries would have to do something about it. They have to acknowledge now that something is happening. When Rahaf's story happened, there was a hashtag on Twitter that was trending very aggressively, and there were thousands of tweets on that where women said, we're going to start leaving Saudi Arabia if these guardianship laws don't change. Where do these guardianship laws come from? One could interpret Quran differently, but there are interpretations that women are meant to be the secondary authorities in a household. And all of these people who actually say, okay, well, this has got Saudi Arabia is barbaric, ISIS is barbaric, Taliban are barbaric, they've got nothing to do with Islam. Sure, someone said earlier that Islam can't be, it's a literal word of God. We know that. That is the claim. But within Quran, there's so many interpretations. You would find a beer-drinking Muslim, and then you would also find a Muslim who would aspire to blow himself up. Now, these are not obviously mutually exclusive things. I mean, as we know, some of the terrorists in France and even the American ones, that they were happy to go to strip bars and still blow themselves up the next day. So all of these kind of things happen, but the interpretations are there, and that's why I slightly differ with Armin, and I hope we'll get to speak in Q&A about that. But I'm just hoping and expecting this tipping point to be reached. And yes, it's happening a lot in the underworld, as I said, if you want to call the intellectual dark web, it's happening a lot. And it's only a matter of time when these mainstream medias are going to start picking it up. My only problem with our own atheist community. We don't like the word community because, as Armin said, we don't want to be acting like the church, or we don't want to be saying, okay, we have our gathering as well. It's just one of those things. We just don't want to do it. People don't want to do it. But my grievance is, for example, in an event like this, we had so many people who showed interest initially, and then they decided to not show up because they were concerned about the security. They thought that there might be a security threat. I think John did tell a lot of them that no, there's no likelihood of that happening. I think that's a bigotry of low expectation as well, not only just from atheists, but also from the mainstream media as well. Okay, we know if we say something to these people, they're going to get upset, so we're not going to talk about this. Let them handle it. Fine, if you're too white to talk about Islam, okay, don't do it. But at least don't stop those who are trying to do it. That's all what we're doing. Yes, it is a brown man's problem. And brown men and women are actually trying to do something about it. So don't stop them, and just let's be a part of it. Let's just have conversation. And I think it's also a moment of self-reflection for those Muslims as well. Do Muslims really want to be seen as these people that the non-Muslims fear them, that they're threatened by them? Muslims would love to tell you, and to some extent, to their extent, it is kind of true that when they say that ISIS or Taliban or they've got nothing to do with Islam, they want to say that. Then this is the moment for them to demonstrate that okay, we don't agree with your atheism, we don't agree with your criticism of our religion, but fine, it's okay. But there's a fear in the mainstream liberal or the mainstream media that okay, we talk about this, that's going to offend those Muslims. I was actually watching a very interesting clip when Charlie Hebdo happened and the attack happened, and it involved Christopher Hitchens. Obviously, it's a long story, long time ago that thing happened, where the CNN woman said that the anchor woman said, well, we should respect Muslims about the beliefs, and that's why we're not showing the cartoons of Muhammad on our screens. And Hitchens, as witty as he said, well, you're not showing it out of respect, you're actually showing it out of fear. Because you know that if you showed it, your CNN journalist somewhere might get killed, or your office might get attacked. And the host actually said, yeah, we are a little bit worried about that too. That's why we didn't show it. So is this a reputation that Muslims want to hold? I'm sure there would be so many who would not want to hold that reputation. They would want people to think, okay, we are civilized enough, just like anyone else. You want to criticize us, we'll give you an answer, and we'll go with that. How are we doing for time? Manny? Should we take some questions if anyone has a question? Yes?
Yeah, I was just going to say, what I'm hearing is a little bit simple-minded, really. There's a lot more to be explored here. I mean, it's a question of spiritual freedom, like what I was getting from the two previous speakers was their anger. Destroy Islam. Well, if you start telling Islam that our path for our spiritual freedom consists in destroying Islam, aren't you sort of making things more difficult for yourselves?
To be honest, I really don't understand what spiritual is. Well, what is it? Can anyone explain to me what spirituality is?
Spiritual means the mind. We have mind's body. Well, the ancients would separate the mind itself into two parts and say there's a more spiritual aspect to the body.
Yeah, what is that spiritual aspect? Well, I know consciousness.
The mind is, for example, the one that would dabble in scientific thoughts. And then there's what they term the lower mind, which is more concerned with satisfying the body. Now, it's just...
There's no scientific evidence for that, you know that. It's consciousness, that's all there is. There's consciousness, we're aware of our surrounding around it, that's it.
Now it's a little bit simple, but that is a perspective.
Well,
There's a perspective they had in ancient times that, yes, there is a body, there is a mind, and we can divide the mind into two parts. There's a mind which is more animal, and there is a mind which is more sophisticated. That's just a perspective.
yeah, but look, these are all different philosophies that people aspire to, but it's not really anything scientific about that. People.
You believe you don't have to deal with the complexities. We can just toss the complexities aside. It's all simple. We'll just walk out the door and we'll be in heaven.
It's not simple at all. The universe is very complicated. We try to understand. But it's got nothing to do with the spirituality definition that you're throwing in. No one has ever been able to define spirituality. People say that, okay, we are feeling this transcendent feeling when you listen to this nice music or when you listen to poetry. Yeah, I'm feeling something. There's this tingling feeling down my spine. That is something. What we have come to understand is that is all conscious. That's just consciousness, and there's activity going on in our brain. That is just telling what it is, how we're feeling. The spiritual aspect. The unknown has often been credited to spiritual aspect, and that's what a lot of Hindu, the Buddhism, for example, they're massive on that. But no one has ever been able to explain what spirituality is. Are you just talking about okay? Well, I get the part where a lot of people say maybe we have a God gene in us that we want to believe in a God. We just have that something in us that we want to believe that there's a big daddy up there waiting for us. Everything's going to be fine. He's just going to hold us in our arms and he's going to welcome us to the heaven. But people still can't reconcile with the fact that there is hell as well by the same big daddy. So okay, so you want to pick a different religion now? The religion where there's only heaven and there's no hell? Where's the fun in that? I mean, then okay, if we're all going to go to heaven, fine, okay, then let me go and do whatever I want to do. So it's obviously we have to build our society around certain principles, around certain laws, and those laws evolve, those philosophies evolve, and that is a product of it. We have a 10,000-year history where we have gone, and we have gone because of that journey, and that journey is going to keep changing. Now, I often wonder what's going to happen, in 100 years' time, that what those people are going to look back at us.
I'm just noticing your position is that if
I'm an atheist, I think.
If I cannot define it, it cannot exist.
No, okay, so there has to be something there must be. I'm not saying that I'm the smartest guy, or I don't think that you would call yourself that either.
You're saying something I don't know about doesn't exist.
Well, there's no evidence for something. Okay, sorry, let's go to a question.
I guess related to that, and more related to the question that I asked Aaron before. I guess relating to that whole sense that there might be something missing, especially if you come from that spiritual background. Not that I am spiritual myself, but do you think there is kind of a space for atheist communities to move more towards, I guess, having not a spiritual kind of ethos, but more, I guess, having an ethos at all, having archetypes, having a path that is typical, and having shared values that are sort of more structured than the current.
Yeah, but whatever that's going to happen, it's still going to happen with the human intellect and human mind, and whatever the people agree, argue upon, and then they come to something. And I was just about to give an example that, okay, well, what are the people 100 years from today, they're going to look back at us, and each and every one of us would be judged by them, and they would think that we were some barbarian people. Just the same way we look at 200 years ago, and we say, okay, you used to own a human being and you used to whip them, or you used to think that this is your property. So what are these people going to look at? That I can think of just one example, but they might come up with 100 other examples. They would think, okay, these guys were barbarian because they used to torture animals and they used to eat them. And vegans might be a little bit ahead of us in that sense, and the morality would have evolved by that point. And morality is always evolving. And now you want to call that some spiritual being told someone that, okay, we shouldn't eat animals? Sure, call it. But as I said, there's no evidence for that. It's not supported by science. And once there's a burden of proof, someone who wants to make a claim that a brain works a certain way, then go prove it in the lab, and we'll all get it. How are we doing that? Sorry? Oh, good. Okay, question. Yes.
Harris, you noticed how atheism is growing quickly in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, and it seems to me that it's growing quicker than so-called reformed Islam. Yes. Do you think that is indicative of the people that it's growing among? It's not just a desire for freedom and a free life that's driving them to believe and do what they do. It's also a desire for knowledge and intellectual curiosity. Is that where?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but. We could put ourselves in a box as well. Like, I mean, for example, the 2 million followers on Atheist Republic. We might think, okay, all of these had the same passion. They wanted to understand what religion is. What the hell have we been killing each other for the last 4,000 years or whatever? So we might think, okay, well, there is a growing urge to debunk religion and actually find what's happening with religion. But, 2 million is still very small compared to 8 billion. So we don't know. There's so many other people who just don't think about it at all. They just don't care about it, and they grow up with a certain thing. And I think I personally think there's more reform happening than actually apostasy happening. This is probably why Armin hates reform so much, because he wants to skip the middleman. He wants to skip the middleman. He wants to go straight to atheism. But there are people who are doing a really good job in doing that, because they are actually reinterpreting Quran. They're actually modifying Islam. And the biggest example of reform of Islam is no Muslim country, and except for ISIS, which is a territory, it's not even a recognized country, except for ISIS, even Taliban did not endorse slavery. So Islam has, okay, albeit I'll give you that, it was forced by the Western civilization to, okay, Saudi Arabia and Yemen, I think, were the last two countries to abolish slavery. And they did it eventually. We'll do that after the conference. They did it eventually, but they did it, right? So there's apart from ISIS infected people, you would actually not find many people who would say, yeah, you know what, bring back slavery. I want to own 3 sex slaves, or, it just doesn't happen anymore. And that is the Reformation. And now, what is happening? I found the other day I was reading of a gay imam. I mean, he's not just a gay Muslim. He's actually he's an imam. There are people behind him actually praying, and they know that, okay, well, he's public. I'm assuming they would know that he's gay, and there are women coming out. They say, okay, this. I don't know if it was true or not, but there was a Muslim woman who was saying, would it be halal if I become a stripper? But I'm assuming there might be some Muslim strippers there too, women. But they would call themselves, I'm a woman, right? So forget about hijab. There could be strippers out there. So I think reform is happening as well. I intellectually I don't agree with that. I'm not like that. Okay, well, if I look at it this way, that if I can understand, I'm not very intelligent. If I can understand, so can anyone. And
I have a question.
Yeah, okay, go.
But are you talking about reforming Islam, or are you talking about reforming Muslims?
Well, it's not like they're mutually exclusive. So when God, what did they say? What's the saying goes? That God created man in His image, and a lot of other people say, well, no, it's actually man created God in His image. It's the same way. Islam is what a Muslim thinks Islam is.
Right, one informs the other, but is not the other.
Well, no, but in their mind, that's all that matters. That's all what they're concerned about. That they think that, okay, this is what Islam. Our prophet was the greatest prophet. Was the best example. He loved children, and they want to ignore the other loving aspects that he had for children. But that's just how people create their vision, and that's what it matters to Islam. Why do people say, ISIS has got nothing to do with Islam? Well, ISIS is the closest form of truest Muhammad's Islam that we can get. But a lot of Muslims don't agree with that. So you could say that Muslims are reforming, but no, in their mind, Islam has reformed as well. Yeah.
And I propose a really good way forward in terms of like the last 10 years or so. I think the internet blowing up has allowed everyone to connect, especially for ex-Muslims in the Middle East, because they're able to now find groups. I was in a Facebook group. It had like 80,000 people in it, and they were all atheists. It was Arabic. I couldn't understand it. But I had friends who were telling me about it, and I think that the censorship, now seeing people being taken offline for Islamophobia and different things, and looking at how those like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, are being what's the word, when they stop them?
Yeah, block them.
Censoring going on.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who's a journalist who was actually sacked for being more outspoken about issues relating to leaving Islam and being against Islam and what have you. And so now she works freelance, but she messaged me the other day about the woman who was in Thailand, and she said we have to get onto this and put some positive things, because the Islamists are already on Twitter, and the guy that she knows, the journalist who interviewed an ex-Muslim woman on, I think it was ABC 24 News, she knows that journalist, and she said he's gone out on a limb against the powers that be in the ABC to interview that woman, and we need to really back him now. We really need to say positive things on social media, so on the Facebook feed and on their Twitter feed, because the Islamist response is going to confirm the ABC executive to say, we've got to shut this down, we can't have this free speech anymore. So the fact that the social media has allowed more ex-Muslims to connect in the Middle East, we have to really look at in Pakistan, in these places that it's not shut down, like in China, for example, where
What?
We just say what the ABC is for anyone who isn't Australian here.
Sorry, say it again.
Can you say what the ABC is for anyone who isn't Australian here?
No, I actually wasn't aware of that. No.
No, the ABC, I mean, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which is the government funded.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Australia.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're trying to do. But again, it's not just all hunky dory. With Facebook, as Armin said, that I have to create a new Facebook profile every 7 or 8 days or so. And Twitter apparently is just as bad. But I don't know. Twitter loves me for some reason. They haven't banned me yet, but I'm assuming it's going to happen at some point. So we're facing another battle on that front. So it's not only just the mainstream media that doesn't want to have anything to do with us, but it would actually be social media as well. But it's just a matter of time. How I would actually want to know about this journalist. I mean, if she, that's pretty brave of her to actually do that and actually risk a job over it. Time? Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. To understand Islam and the Muslim world more, buy my book, The Curse of God, Why I Left Islam. Available in all your favorite online bookstores. If you like my work, then please support me on Patreon or follow me on Twitter.